So we have I think it's about 15, 16 slides about the INTAROS project. Some of you have probably heard this before, but I would like to start from the beginning. As you know, this INTAROS project is an EU project funded by the European Commission, and we started this project soon a year ago in December last year. And the objective is to develop an efficient integrated Arctic observation system by extending, improving, and unifying existing and evolving systems in the different regions of the Arctic. So naturally, we have been working mostly with our European partners who are funded to do work in this project, but we also have other partners from US, Canada, and from Asian countries, Russia, China, Japan, and South Korea. So it's quite a bit of an organizational effort to trying to see what all these groups are doing, and also how we can trying to work together with all these partners. We are 49 partners from 20 countries, so it's quite an organizational effort also to move forward with this plan. So if the next slide shows roughly just a map of the Arctic, we are indicating that we are working in 5-6 different regions. So the circles means that we have some activities going on in the central Arctic. That's basically sea ice and oceanography work. Then there is the green circle is from Greenland, showing that there are some groups working both with the Greenland ice sheets, but also with the ocean areas in the coastal areas around Greenland. And also we have in Baffin Bay, Canadian teams from the Takuvik Center is working there with oceanographical measurements. And then we have a couple of minor circles around Svalbard that is basically teams working with the oceanographical moorings and also seafloor observatories. Then we have the large red circle is showing that we have teams working with terrestrial and atmospheric observations in various sectors around the Pan-Arctic region, and these are different teams both working in Finland, in Russia, and in Alaska and northern Canada. So we have quite a widespread activities by different groups in the project. Then we show a slide just about the work package structure of the project. Work package 1 on top is more the overall coordinating work package, where we look into the requirements and strategies for Pan-Arctic systems. Then below that, work package 2, 3, and 4 is all about collecting and coordinating data acquisitions. And for example, work package 2 is how we can best exploit already existing systems. Work package 3 is about how we can improve the observing system by installing and deploying more platforms and sensors. And work package 4 is about how we engage with the community-based systems. Work package 5 is trying to integrate data from all these different sources into what we call application studies. Work package 6 is directed towards certain user groups. So we call it application studies towards climate modeling is one group, quite large group. Then we have groups working more with ice-ocean statistics. That's more nowcasting, forecasting for operators, typical for offshore industry and for shipping and so forth. Then we have a third group is fisheries and marine ecosystems, and there is also several other such groups. So specific objectives, we want to establish some sort of Pan-Arctic forum across the whole Pan-Arctic region, both with the European countries, but also North American and Asian countries, as well as the organizations that already are in place. One of the outcomes from the project is to build a roadmap or define a roadmap how we can build sustainable Arctic observing systems. Continuing in work package 2 is to exploit the existing observing systems and databases, because there are already many of those. They are more or less mature or immature. Some of them are recently established, and we know that there will be new ones being established. So we have to find ways to work with these already established and developing databases. We want to fill gaps in the observing system. In work package 3, we are going to do this deployment and installation of more platforms and sensors. Then we have work package 4 is about the community-based programs, and work package 5 is this implementation of a platform which can integrate data from the different disciplines, assuming that these data are sitting in distributed repositories. And then, for example, we will demonstrate assimilation into climate models. So that is one of these application studies. Here we are going to work together with other projects, like Blue Action is another EU project which is running in parallel with INTAROS. So we have some collaboration plans with them that they will use the data that we provide from INTAROS. And then there will be other application studies as well. So what we need to do is to build a system which can cover atmosphere, ocean, and terrestrial themes. And now it's a little bit. Yeah. We need to make sure that we can cover the appropriate temporal and spatial scales and resolutions. And satellite data is going to play a more and more important role. They will collect a lot of more data, especially from the surface, but there are still large gaps in the in situ network. So INTAROS will focus on how we can best develop the in situ network. In situ data are specifically important to collect data which we cannot get from remote sensing or we cannot get from numerical models. So the in situ data are also needed to validate remote sensing and resolve the models. I don't know how much we could go into a little bit each of the work packages. I mentioned that this work package 1 is about requirements and strategies that we find in different countries and different organizations who have already developed requirement. For example, GCOS has spent a lot of effort to develop quite extensive requirement documents, so we don't need to do that again. We can just review what already have been written down in these requirement documents and strategy documents. So the coordination activity is important that we do it in collaboration with other Arctic projects, initiatives, and stakeholder requirements. We want also one of the things from European side is to strengthen the European participation in Arctic observing networks, and also to establish this observation forum. We don't have any clear idea yet what that should be, but we are, for example, now we are already started to work with SEON and the work and the committees under SEON. So it seems that we have to go in a direction that also is the same as SEON is doing. Okay, I think that was the most important thing in work package 1. Then work package 2 is ongoing now with the analysis of a number of present observing networks and databases. So we are conducting this online survey where we are looking into a selected observing systems and networks which covers the different spheres. And the background is that we need to select some of them which should deliver data which we will use for this integration. and also to carry out the application study for selected stakeholder groups. Also, standardization of the data and metadata is part of the work, so we can ensure that best practices are followed and that we can integrate sparse in situ data into established networks and preparing delivery to this integrated system. And finally, there will be a synthesis of this work. I think that will be in the third year of this project. Here are just some examples of maps that we used in the proposal to illustrate how sparse the observing systems are, especially in the Arctic Ocean. There is on land, on the terrestrial sites, there is quite a number of stations, but these stations are very different. And if you look at how much data is collected and all these things, then of course it's highly variable. And here we are working with other projects like this INTAROS. It's another European infrastructure project, which are looking more into what data are being produced at these stations. So I mentioned these questionnaires. We are now working with a number of questionnaires, which are, the purpose is to assess a catalog. What are the existing in situ observing systems, and what are the in situ data sets that already are established, and which are under development or under establishment. We are also going to look into somewhat into the satellite products, but we know that satellite products are very well addressed in a number of other projects. So we are only going to refer to activities which are being done in other projects. And then I haven't included yet, I should have done this earlier today, we have the D point here is about questionnaire related to community-based observing system, because this has now recently started. So we do the same sort of survey for the community-based systems. So now this is going on internally among the partners. It's quite excited about this, because it is quite difficult. You meet all sorts of problems with the nomenclature. What are the the meaning of words, semantics, things, because you are talking to people in different disciplines. So we are really into really the semantics of the different disciplines and how to do that. And you have to solve that in some way if you are going to build this on interoperable system. Anyway, we are going to have let's say in January, we will have the annual meeting in this project, and then we will have a workshop of the presenting the results, so work package 2, the questionnaire, and then the plan is also that we will have a wider participation in the survey. For example, now we have already have people from SEON have been participating already, and from SEON point of view, it was very much interest that we should extend this survey to include more people who have databases. Here is a little bit just about deliverable. We are going to deliver a report on this by May next year. So this workshop will be sort of a midway review of how far we have got, and then we have the spring next year to complete this reports. Okay. Yeah, work package 3, we can say a little bit about it. I already mentioned that we are doing field work starting a little bit this year. There have been a number of, we have participated in a number of expedition with icebreakers, and terrestrial teams have been working on the terrestrial station and so on. So I think here we will have much more to report on later on. Yeah, here again, coming back to this deployment area, which I already mentioned, so I don't need to repeat that. Community-based system, I also don't have much report there. We will have the first report coming in, I think in February. There will be the first report on this, which is about task for one. It is a survey and analysis of existing community-based observing programs in the Arctic. So we have a team of people working here. They are working with people in Canada, in Alaska, people in Greenland, and also in Russia. So it's quite spread out activity. So they are working with selected groups in these different regions. The plan is to also build or develop tools for cross-fertilization between indigenous knowledge and scientific knowledge, which is quite a challenging task, because you have to deal with knowledge which is not necessarily quantified in numbers, and how do you combine that with scientific knowledge. And then there will be more coming later. Just a few words about this integration plan. We assume that there is already now a lot of distributed databases, which is indicated on top here. And we are going to concentrate our effort in the middle part of the diagram, where we are going to harvest metadata from the different databases, and then we use that for searching for the data that we want to use, and then we can transform, analyze, and visualize the data set that we want to use for the different application studies. So that is the work package 5 activity, and it should lead to examples of applications in different disciplines, as we showed in this work package 6. Here is a more complicated figure. I don't think we should go into the details here, but there are already have been identified a number of repositories, both within the partners. There are other European repositories, non-European repositories. We have the Pangea system in Germany, which we will use. And then down here, we see here at the bottom, we have satellite data repositories. And then the work we will do is actually inside that red box. That's where we are going to develop these systems to be able to integrate data and so on. And then there will be a portal which gives the user access to these activities or the results coming from work package 5. So that's as much as I can say now. This is, as I said, we are working together with the Arctic Data Committee here, and we are also working in collaboration with similar projects by the European Space Agency. So we hope that this can give us the necessary tools to do this integration, or to demonstrate that we can integrate data. Yeah. Now, finally, we are going to demonstrate this to stakeholder groups, and we have to do that through quite the concrete examples where we have certain data, we have certain scientific issues we want to address. Then we have to have users and stakeholders who can sit and look at the result and assess how useful is this system that we are going to make. So now we have these main stakeholder groups. I mentioned climate modeling is one, marine ecosystem, understanding of marine ecosystem and management of marine ecosystems. We have this ice ocean statistics for decision support and risk analysis, especially towards offshore industry and shipping. A group is working with natural hazards in the Arctic. Here is earthquakes and earth slides and snow avalanches, examples of problems that we will look into. Coming back to climate, we have teams working with greenhouse gas exchange in the Arctic, both in atmosphere, ocean, and land. We have this local community interaction with scientific observing systems. We have also support to marine and maritime industries, and also demonstration for fisheries and environmental agencies. What we have done so far is we have had some workshops with stakeholders. The first workshop was in Brussels in May this year. Then we had another one, follow-up was another workshop took place in Fairbanks during that Arctic week, in the week after. So the community observing system team had a workshop there. We have had a lot of several dialogue and meetings with a number of other Arctic projects, Arctic programs, and not least European Commission. We are building up more specific stakeholder interaction in each of the thematic areas, because we need to classify stakeholder into different disciplines and problem areas that we are going to address. So here is just a list of those most important thematic areas which will be addressed. And then we have the Stakeholder Innovation Advisory Panel, which we will invite now for when we have our first annual meeting in January. And then there will be also follow-up workshops. We will have the next one in Oslo now in November in connection with the Svalbard Science Conference. And then there will also be another workshop during Arctic Change in Quebec City, where the community-based observing system team will have a workshop. So we see now that there is going to be quite a number of these workshops, 2, 3, or 4 each year, and we would like, of course, that we are well integrated in with other programs when we carry out these workshops. Categories, I don't think we need to repeat that. We are trying to address a wide range of different categories of stakeholders. This is just how we look at, if you are sitting as a user or a stakeholder in the middle of this project, then you want to see that there are data coming in from the lower panel. We will have data coming in from the different observing systems. We will have taking in models, and for example, climate models, ecosystem models have to come in from other projects coming in from the side. And then on top we have these different stakeholder groups that are going to be the user or should use the system. Yeah. Finally, now I think this is the last slide. This is now this EU Arctic project cluster, where INTAROS is one of several projects. And now we have the EU PolarNet is more the coordinating action project, which is basically organizing meetings and workshops and develop a number of documents. Then we have INTAROS, this project, and then we have the new Arctic Permafrost project, which has not started yet. I heard that it will start very soon. Interact is this research station network project, which is dealing with all these Arctic stations and develop collaboration between these Arctic stations. On the right-hand side, we have Applicate and Blue Action. That is 2 modeling projects which are going to use the data and going to improve the modeling and forecasting capability. Both those projects are closely connected to the YOP program, so they are supporting the development of improved modeling during YOP. RISE is a new infrastructure project which is going to fund use of, you can apply for icebreaker use. So it's money allocated from the European Commission to improve the access to icebreakers. So that's also very interesting, can be very useful, because it allows researchers to have more cruise time on board icebreakers. And then ArcIce finally is a project in which is soon coming to an end. It is an ice, really a sea ice focused project which have been going on for, I think, soon 4 years, and they are coming to an end now in next few months. And at the bottom, we also mention various other infrastructure projects which contribute to the observing system, like Actris, ICOS, SIOS in Svalbard, and others. Yeah, that's it. I think I used more than 15 minutes, but.
I think you did. But maybe what I would point out is Alice and Gaylord entered something in the chat. related to work package 2. And so maybe we'll let Allison say a quick word about that, and then shift to Mary Beth's presentation so we have time for discussion. And we can comprehensively discuss everything at that point.
Thanks, Sandy. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to offer an opportunity. I would love to collaborate and have a follow-up discussion. It seems like there may be, in a smaller way, some overlap in our tasking. I think it looks like you've got a much broader funding base for the data management, but we've made some headway in cataloging a lot of the resources for existing US-funded networks in the Arctic, and I have captured some of the international activities, and we'd be happy to share those if it's helpful to further your efforts. And would love to get feedback on what you think of our effort as well. So perhaps we can schedule a follow-up discussion in a couple weeks.
That sounds very interesting. I mean, we should try to work together if we have similar tasks, so that we are not, how do you say, doing things in parallel. We could work together to make best effort.
That sounds great.
Yeah. So do you contact us, or do we contact you?
Let's see. If you put your email in the chat, I guess I can schedule set up a doodle, and we can go from there.
Yeah, if I can find that one.
Or I could just put mine in.
Maybe I should stop sharing, and then it will come.
Oh no, it should be.
Might be in your more.
I could stop sharing anyway, because here, now I see it. So chat, and
I'll jump in a little bit. I work with Allison. I'm Bill Manley at the University of Colorado. We had some interaction in May by email with Roberta Pirozzini, and provide some input on one of the questionnaires. And yeah, indeed, it would be good to collaborate and mutual benefit, and maybe look at data sharing or information sharing.
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, well, so super. I'm glad you guys were able to make that connection, and thanks so much for the presentation as well. I think it was valuable to see an update for me, at least, on where you've gotten since we met in April in Prague. And Mary Beth, are you? I know you have practiced this once with the screen share. Are you able to? Let's jump into Mary Beth's presentation, and then we'll return to our discussion question. Thanks, Mary Beth.
Okay, I'm working on it here. I've had lots of practice today, but that doesn't necessarily mean. How's that?
Great.
Yay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Oh my, I have to manage 2 screens now, so this could be challenging. Well, thanks, Sandy, for asking us to come and talk to the group today about the Observing Summit. And I wasn't exactly sure, you know, how many people would be on the call or on the video, whatever you want to call it. So I'm gonna do a little overview of where we've come since we started putting the summits together back in 2012, and where that brings us to for the plans and the themes for 2018. So I think I have 12 slides. Just for those of you who don't know, the executive committee, in addition to myself, consists of members of the organizing committee from 2016, Larry Hinsman, and Hayo Eichen from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Peter Schlosser from Columbia University, Volker Rachhold, formerly of IASC, now of Alfred Wegener, Alan Pope, who's currently the IASC Executive Secretary, Jan-René Larsen from AMAP/SEON, Aoife Krummel, who has been at ICC, Inuit Circumpolar Council Canada, and then we're building out the scientific team now, but just so you have a sense. And most of those people that I've mentioned have been involved in putting the summit together from the very beginning. We now have a set of process and documents in case I die that people will know how we build those committees, because there are certain organizations that are meant to be involved all the time. So if that happens, I've left instructions how to find that on my computer. Okay, so the summit is actually, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but the idea for the summit has been around for a long time. Those of you in the US will know that a lot of the background for building an integrated international observing summit came out of the SEARCH program and others. And in 2010, when the International Study of Arctic Change published its science plan, a key component of that science plan under observing was the development and implementation of an internationally supported pan-Arctic observing system. And that system should be connected to global observing systems, and that it should be doing collecting observational data that was relevant to science, relevant to operational agencies, and to people's lives more generally. So we've had 3 observing summits beginning in 2013 in Vancouver, 2014 in Helsinki, and 2016 in Fairbanks. The goal has always been to do these biannually in partnership with the Arctic Science Summit Week. Because we were out of sync the first year in 2013, we had one right immediately afterwards in 2014 to get in sync with AOSSW. So the summit goes in years alternate to the science conference. And each year we've had the summit organized thematically, and these are the themes from the previous 3 summits. And you can see that there are some that carry through all 3 years, particularly mechanisms in improving international coordination, technology, data management, and stakeholder engagement. And each year we've built the themes of the summit on the recommendations of previous years. And I uploaded this paper to the IRPIC document, or this presentation, so you can go back and look at it if you want. I thought I'd give people a sense of kind of engagement, different kinds of groups that have been engaged in the summit. And I should say in 2013 and 2016, we had white papers submitted to the summit that were directed towards the themes, and also short statements. And we also allowed people to contribute posters so that we could cover things that might not necessarily be covered by the themes that have been picked for the year. So you can see that in 2016, the white papers came in on all topical areas: Indigenous knowledge, community-based monitoring, global initiatives, stakeholder engagement, private sector involvement, technology, and international strategies. By far, the biggest contributions were around global initiatives. And that was where we got papers from individual programs, some of which Hannah and Stein mentioned in their talk. And I would say Hannah was an integral part of the 2013 summit in helping us get that going and get that organized. This is the participation that we've had with respect to different international engagement. So red is 2013, blue is 2014, green is 2016. You can see that the USA has always had strong participation, but particularly in 2016, and that makes sense because the meeting was held in Fairbanks and it was part of that such a large Arctic gathering under AOSSW and Arctic Council. Canada has also been a strong participant, as has Finland and the other Scandinavian countries. But interestingly enough, you know, we're getting participation from some of the more outlier kinds of countries that you might think of, like Egypt and Portugal and Romania. So there's broad international interest, and each time we hold it, the summit increases in number of participants. So in 2016 in Fairbanks, the participants, 400 plus participants, were able to come to a consensus agreement on major recommendations that should go forward with an eye to ensuring that successive summits would result in real concrete things, not just sets of recommendations, but actual concrete items that could be implemented or actual implementation activities. And these are those recommendations. I'm not going to read them to you because everybody is literate. You can download them if you haven't read them already from the Arctic Observing Summit website. The one I want to highlight here is recommendation number 2, because this is the recommendation that has been taken up to be the overarching theme for the 2018 summit, and that is the development of a business case for a comprehensive pan-Arctic observing system. So that's talking about the cost and benefits of developing and supporting such a system or not supporting such a system, and how the benefits will be realized at various levels. It also includes the development of an implementation plan that builds on existing systems. So not dissimilar to what Stein was talking about with INTAROS, looking at what's out there and building on that. And then specifically identifying the needed resources, including infrastructure, instrumentation, human capacity, and pathways to financing, and a strategy for sustained financing. So this is the overarching theme for 2016. And it wasn't actually very difficult to settle on this as a theme. The EC has been pushing the case for a business case for an observing system. We've certainly started talking about it here in Canada. What are the costs and benefits of supporting the system, both within our own country and internationally? And I know that it's been on the radar in other places as well. Overall, from 2016 and the previous years, there are 100 plus recommendations, but these can kind of be grouped in these more specific categories around creating and supporting coordinated cyber infrastructure, improving interoperability among systems and projects, improving access to observing sites and data collection, moving towards ensuring pan-Arctic coverage and continuity, and particularly in the Eurasian sector, improving the diversity of participants and developing an inventory of community-based monitoring programs, linking efforts, standards, methods, and variables and indicators in use. So for example, the GEOS, the WMO standards being linked to standards that smaller scale programs and projects are using, trying to move towards common ground. Engaging stakeholders, and here I would say non-science stakeholders at all stages in the development and implementation of an observing system, and incorporating and expanding technologies for real-time data capture and accessibility, and importantly, investment in some data rescue and building out baseline data. And just to give you an example of how some of these have moved forward, I thought I would talk about one specific set of recommendations. So one, under the first theme we had in 2016 were international and national strategies for sustained long-term support of Arctic observing. And the two specific recommendations were that SAON should continue to develop and establish inventory of circum-Arctic observational and monitoring assets, and that all nations and organizations involved should provide SAON with basic information on these efforts. And so subsequently, SAON had been developing a work plan to provide a foundation for these efforts. And then we, within the Observing Summit group, had been looking at providing information to national AOS committees to identify observational infrastructure. So in Canada, we've slowly started moving towards identifying our a more comprehensive understanding of our current observational infrastructure and needs. And that would include research infrastructure and needs of Indigenous and government organizations. And I would point to INTAROS as an example of also moving forward on this recommendation with the inventory that they've been putting or working towards putting together. So we do see that recommendations coming out of the summit are starting to be taken up both in the national context and at project level, which is encouraging. So where are we now? Components of the observing system are being implemented. INTAROS is a nice example of that. And at the higher level, the focus is shift to operationalization and long-term sustainability, and the transformation of pure research observing systems to systems that serve stakeholder needs and operational needs and things like that. So the planning for 2018 is well underway, and we will see a formal call for participation and contribution of short statements out this week. I actually had hoped that it would go out on Monday, but we're a little bit behind because of the meeting in Iceland, and where we wanted to make sure that we had really settled on the sub-themes that would go under the larger headings, the larger heading of the cost benefit or the business case for an observing system. So I'm hoping you'll start to see this call out tomorrow and Friday and through next week through various networks. If there's a way that IRPIC can share it, you could talk to me about that afterwards. That would be great. So here's what we're looking at now for subthemes under the overarching theme of the business case for an Arctic observing system. The need for the system is sort of subtheme number 1, and optimization of the system would be subtheme number 2. And under subtheme number 1, need for the system, we see societal benefit areas, long-term and global perspectives, and how can an observing system contribute to UN Sustainable Development Goals, and why that's important. And then short-term and local benefits, how can an observing system or components of an observing system contribute to responding to rapid Arctic change. So that really is for Arctic nations and Arctic communities. And then the third area under that subheading would be the need for an Arctic observing system to support entrepreneurship, and how Arctic observing infrastructure and a system would support economic diversification, social enterprise, and community development. And then under the second big category, which sort of gets us into the more nuts and bolts kinds of things around optimization. How do we optimize technology in different areas and technology in support of public and private interest? How do we optimize use of what's already in place and what's being proposed to put in place? And then data management in support of public and private interest. So we're not soliciting white papers this year. That is a very time-consuming process for both the community that is writing and producing white papers and also the AOS scientific committee that reviews and vets them. And we felt, based on feedback from 2013 and 2016, that a full white paper process is something that's probably only needed every second summit, so every 4 years. And then, but we do still want to make sure that we get input from the broader community, whether it's the research community, the operational community, whatever. So we will continue to solicit shorter statements on these areas that have been identified, as well as others that people think are critical and key. And those short statements then will be used to inform the structure and the discussion and the conversation at the summit. So how do we want to approach this? Through the short statements, we hope to identify more specific topics under these subthemes that can be used in breakout groups to move towards implementation of certain strategies, recommendations for new ways to approach funding and long-term support. We also hope that the breakout discussions would lead us to be able to talk about recent progress, what are some of the new challenges, best practices that will take us to the next level. And so just to give you a couple of examples, what we might consider doing, depending on the kinds of statements that come in, is bringing together some of those that are involved in cryospheric observing and big programs like the Global Cryosphere Watch to really look at how that program could help meet UN Sustainable Development Goals. Or, for example, bringing together the different biodiversity observing programs and looking at how these programs can be developed or improved to provide observations that are relevant to managing fish stocks and fisheries and establishing moratoria or not, as the case may be. So I'm not necessarily saying that those are ones that would go forward for more detailed discussion. They're just kind of examples of what those of us in the organizing committee have pulled out of previous recommendations, and those that have been appointed to the scientific committee are already thinking about in terms of concrete discussions. And of course, the end goal here is to be able to produce some documents at the end of the summit that we can turn over to our respective national organizations and funding bodies and international organizations to say, here are things that can be done in the short, medium, and long term that will get us to where we need to go to support SD Sustainable Development Goals and other societally relevant objectives around Arctic observing. And I think I'm done.